Good morning, you guys. How you doing this morning? Yeah? Great. I'm doing well. It's been a fun morning. If you haven't yet, the policy and protocol of the Front Church is that no people who are not background checked volunteers can go back into our kid front spaces. But you can go back with an escort of a background checked volunteer. And we have something exciting to show you back there after our worship time. So I would love to give you guys little tours, a little bit of a picture of what is coming. But if we haven't met before, my name is Nate, and I'm the lead pastor of the Front Church. And if you're new, we're so happy to have you. If you're from another tradition or you don't consider yourself particularly religious, I guarantee you're not the only one who would fit that description. But we are so pumped. And right now, we are in our preseason. And our preseason looks a little different than our season. Our preseason is everything that is happening prior to being able to have large gatherings in a post-COVID-19 world. So our auditorium looks a little different. That's what we're headed towards. This is what things look like now. The barren wasteland that you kind of walk through to get over here, we're going to transform that into our cafe area. And so that's going to look a little different in the season. And then the summit, which is our kid front worship rally space, is actually not going to look much different than it looks this morning, which is what I'd love to show you guys afterward. It looks amazing, but here's what happened. Some of you guys may know, some of you may not. But on yesterday, we had scheduled set up Saturday. And we had to postpone it. And this morning, we had scheduled an open house because we wanted to show people what our whole space is going to look like, transformed as we're headed towards our grand opening. But we had to postpone that too because a soundboard that's supposed to be here is not here. That's a pretty important piece of equipment to learn how to operate. And so we postponed. But we're able to still set up our kid front area, and so it looks so good. If you want to just imagine, like, that kid front space is a microcosm of the type of transformation that's going to happen here and the type of transformation that's going to happen there. It looks amazing, but you know what? There's always going to be interruptions. Anyone else understand that? I mean, I thought this morning would be a good moment to just pause and talk, kind of share some of a brief history of the Front Church based on the fact that I wasn't actually supposed to be giving a message this morning. I was supposed to give a little devotional thought as we did our open house, and that changed. And so here we are. And so the Front Church, we had plans last year, and they were interrupted, like all the rest of your plans last year. I have a journal entry that I reread this week from April 7th, 2020. And earlier in the year, 2020, we had 8 people say yes, they want to be on the team that helped start the Front Church. And our team began to grow some. And I was rereading my journal entry on April 7th, and the night before must have been a pretty rough night for me. You see, we had plans with Caleb and Maddie. You guys don't even know who that is. Caleb and Maddie were graduating college. They're engaged. They're going to get married. They're going to move here. They had job offers here. They were going to get jobs, and Caleb was going to be our worship leader. And we weren't even going to have to pay him because he was going to work. He had an engineering job lined up. It was amazing. And then coronavirus hit. And they rescinded the job offer to Caleb. I was like, bye-bye, Caleb and Maddie. And they moved to Texas. Texas. It's okay. God can use them in Texas. We had plans with a young family. Check out this story. I spoke at K2 the church last February, so like just over a year ago, and shared a little bit about what we're doing here. And after that, a young family came up to me. And I recognized them, and they recognized me. And I'm like, hey, what are you guys doing here? They're like, well, we're looking for a church. I said, you can't tell a church planner you're looking for a church. Like, come on. And then she went on to tell me, she said, Nate, I heard you preach a year ago at a church that I'd preached at, and she said, God told me you were going to plant a church. I was like, oh. My God, you are in this. Like, you tell her I'm going to plant a church before you even confirm it to me, and then they happen to be here on the Sunday that I'm speaking at K2, the church. This is amazing. And we start to get to know the couple, and they're fun, they're a cool couple. But on the night of April 6th, I got off the phone with them, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna plug in somewhere else. Dang. We had plans for building our launch team, the Front Church launch team. We were going to do worship nights and neighborhood cookouts, and I had dreams of filling my living room with people, and I had dreams of filling other people's living rooms with people who are on our team. And then the coronavirus hits, and I'm like, God, how is this supposed to happen? How is our team supposed to grow? We had plans interrupted for our grand opening, which was supposed to be September 2020. And just the coronavirus felt like this giant standing in front of us. And it's like, I do not know how to get past this giant. How is this going to happen, God? There will always be interruptions. Anyone about this time last year have some plans interrupted? Anyone have some life interrupted? I mean, vacations. Some of us have dealt, just as an aside, but a serious aside, some of us have dealt with life interruptions this year. On the scale of losing loved ones. On the scale of this being a harder year than you could ever imagine. And I just want to say that I'm about to proceed with the rest of the message. I don't want you to think that I'm minimizing that pain or that hurt or that heartache. It's been a hard year. It's been a hard year. But I think God has something for us all this morning as we think about interruptions. There's a story in the Old Testament, and it's the story of some people who know a thing or two about their life and their plans being interrupted. God, you can throw that first slide up, God had miraculously rescued his people from a tyrant ruler in Egypt. And then God had nourished his people in the wilderness, giving them food, giving them drink. And then, you can go to the next slide, God had led his people by a cloud during the day and a pillar of fire at night. And then God was present with his people. And the tabernacle was a symbol of where you go, I go. And they'd come. They'd made it. They'd been rescued, and they made it all the way to the land of promise. And God, this is the land. This is what I have for you. And so they do their due diligence, and they send 12 spies into the land. And then 12 spies go into the land, and they come back and report to the people a few days later, and they say, hey, the land is fantastic. This is a great spot. This is amazing. But then 10 of the 12 spies say, but there are giants. We don't know how we're going to get in here. We don't know how it's going to work. Look at these giants. We can't take this land. We can't get in. And they freak, 10 of the 12 spies, 10 of the 12 leaders. And then they start getting everyone else freaked out. And the whole community of people is freaked out. Like, God, you led us this far. There are giants. And that is where our story picks up, with the giants in view. And we've already read it once with the kids. Let's read it again. Numbers chapter 14. And that night, all the members of the community raised their voices and wept aloud. All the Israelites grumbled against their leaders, Moses and Aaron, and the whole assembly said to them, if only we had died in Egypt or in this wilderness. Why is the Lord bringing us to this land only to let us fall by the sword? And they said to each other, we should choose a leader and go back to Egypt. We had it better as slaves, they're saying. Slaves, like God rescued them from slavery. They said, we had it better there than we have it with these giants in front of. What happened? What happened? They forgot. They forgot all the things God had done. They forgot how God had rescued them. They forgot how God had nourished them. They forgot how God had led them. They forgot how God was present with them. And all they could see in front of them was giants. And they forgot. The God who leads you to the land will lead you through the land. And the story just gets sadder if you were to keep reading it. Like, they miss it. Not only do they forget, they forget, and then they miss it, and then they wander in the wilderness another 40 years, and they don't even get into the good land. It's their kids who get into the good land. My journal entry from April 7th, telling about the night of April 6th, I'm sad. Bye-bye, Caleb and Maddie, who are going to lead worship for us. Bye-bye, friends who we were getting to know, who we thought, like, God, you've lined this up. Hi, coronavirus. Bye, all our original plans for block parties and house parties and neighborhood get-togethers and barbecues. Like, all these interruptions, all of this was just swarming in my head. Swarming. Like, I was staring at giants, and I'm like, God, how is this going to work? And I happened to be, because God knows us, doesn't he? I happened to be reading this story. I didn't seek this story out. This story came to me. I happened to be reading this story that night. And in my spirit, I felt the Lord say, take the land. I've called you. I made it clear where I'm leading you. And it may feel like there's giants in front of you, but I'm with you. Take the land. Because the God who leads you to the land will lead you through the land. The night of April 6th, it felt like a whisper. And then a nudge. And then in my journal entry on the morning of April 7th, I wrote, it feels like a resounding gong. Take the land. Because there will always be interruptions. But the God who leads you to the land will lead you through the land. We have the benefit of reading this story through Jesus. Because as Christians, how we treat our scripture is the scriptures themselves, the New Testament authors tell us that Jesus is the perfect picture of God. The scriptures tell us that long ago God spoke through the prophets, but in these last days he's spoken through his Son, who's the exact representation of his nature. That's what the author of Hebrews tells us. So that means when we read Old Testament stories, we get to put our Jesus lens on and look at them through that. And what do we learn if we do that? We're kind of like the people in the story. Jesus has miraculously rescued us from an evil tyrant, the tyrant of our souls. He's freed us from that thing in the way of our experiencing God's presence. He's nourished us. Jesus himself says, my flesh is true food. My blood is true drink. He's saying, I'm what you need. I'm what you need. He's led us. He says, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. He's led us to the Father, and he's present to us in the Holy Spirit. Matthew 28:20 says, I am with you always to the very end of the age. So Jesus has miraculously rescued us. He's nourished us. He's led us. He's present to us. But when we're interrupted and a giant is staring us in the face, we can forget those things. Look at the giants. I do this all the time. There's giants. There's giants. We forget. He's rescued us. He's nourished us. He's led us. He's with us. And we can just see those guys in front of us. There are giants. Did you guys know that only 15% of Utah church plants, that's a way to describe a new church, only 15% of Utah church plants survive past their 5th birthday. That means 85% of new churches are done. They cease to exist before their 5th birthday. There are people who don't even consider starting something new in Utah because of the giants. But they forget that the God who leads you to the land will lead you through the land. Within 5 miles of where we are right now, there are 96,000 people And if you count us, which I do, there are 4 Christian churches and 96,000 people. We are in the place that's going to be, this area, Draper, Utah, just right by the prison land, is supposed to be the 2nd largest city in Utah in 15 years. Meaning people are just going to pour in. And there are four Christian churches. That feels almost impossible. They're giants. The Lord, the God who leads you to the land will lead you through the land. We have the best neighbors in Utah. You know that? Like they're so good at caring for people and loving people and smiling. They're the greatest. I love living here. I love raising my kids here. But Utah, we're really good at smiling, but we're a national leader in depression rates. We're a national leader in suicide rates. We're a national leader in plastic surgery. We are a national leader in porn consumption. What does that tell me? That tells me we're really good at smiling, but we're really not good at letting people in on what's actually going on in here. And you know what can actually free us to be honest about the stuff deep down in here is Jesus' cross. Because not only the entrance requirements, like the staying requirements, the entrance requirements of becoming a follower of Jesus are saying, I don't have it all together. I needed him to die on the cross for me. And then to continue walking with Jesus is continuing to admit, I don't have it all together. I needed Jesus to die on the cross for me. So that means when we're struggling with something, we don't have to hide it or pretend like everything's okay. We can say, I don't have it all together. The cross actually frees us. You know how desperately people in our state need that? You know how desperately spiritually curious people just need to know a place where they can try and figure some stuff out? I'm sure you guys do. You have friends. You have family members. You have coworkers. You have classmates. You have neighbors. You have kiddos. Some of you have grown-up kids. And I know that if you ended up here, you know at least a place where a spiritually curious person can come and explore. But most people in our state, they actually don't know where to go. And the only way they're going to know is if more places pop up for spiritually curious people to come and explore. Sometimes it can feel like there's giants. How is this going to work? The task almost seems overwhelming. Another task that seems overwhelming to me when thinking about the front church and thinking about our grand opening in September is the fact that we need 92 roles filled by September for our grand opening. 92 roles filled. God, there are giants. And he's saying, you should come to the picnic, by the way, to find out how you can help fill one of those 92 roles. But God is saying, take the land. Because the God who leads us to the land is going to lead us through the land. You know what happens when life is interrupted? We think interruptions are inconveniences, don't we? Oh, dang it, this interruption. Life, you had a plan for life, and then the interruption feels like you're veered off course from your plan. You lose your job. Interruption. You have a relationship gone awry. Maybe it's just something small, like you're stuck in traffic, and you're like, man, what an inconvenience. Or your server continues to get your food wrong, and you're never coming back to this restaurant again. Or at work, you put in the work, you thought you were thorough, and then your boss just came in to give you an earful. We see interruptions as inconveniences. But did you know God's vision is bigger than our interruptions? And God sees our interruptions as invitations. In my experience, it is in the interruptions that I experience Jesus' story and Jesus' presence, almost more so than when life is just going according to plan. You lost your job. Well, That's not comfortable. But you can begin to experience Jesus' peace, Jesus' sustaining presence, Jesus using his people to care for you and love you because we're a community that doesn't have to pretend to have it all together. We can support and carry one another. You have a relationship gone awry. Is that an interruption or is that an invitation? Sometimes relationships that go awry tend to show us a side of ourselves we don't like. That's an invitation. Maybe you're stuck in traffic and it just is this inconvenience. Maybe God's trying to grow you in patience. Maybe there's an invitation to prayer. Maybe you're like, I don't have time to pray. I don't have time to be with God. I'm so busy. My life's so busy. And now you're stuck in traffic. You could just fill your time with talk radio and sports and music, or maybe this interruption is an invitation into something else. There will always be interruptions, but God invites us to see our interruptions not as inconveniences, but invitations. And in the interruptions, we forget that the God who leads us to the land will lead us through the land. We're facing some giants. 15% success rate. New churches, that's a giant. 96,000 people and growing, that's a giant. 92 roles needing to be filled. If you're counting, 20 on the setup and tear down team, 24 kid front roles, 18 people on our hospitality team before September. That feels like a giant. Financially, sometimes it can feel like a giant when you're a new church. Our rent is amazing right now. We have a coronavirus agreement with the school. Post-coronavirus, when we start going big, our rent goes up substantially. That's a giant. You know that there are people who believe in the vision of the front church so much that we're being supported by people on the outside looking in and being like, I believe that this is something that needs to happen. And so they're financially giving to help get this thing going. It's amazing. Or maybe the giant, and then you guys, I have a heart for my friends, my family, I do care about my coworkers, but my work situation is a little different than yours. But my kiddos, my neighbors, I have a heart for them. And sometimes the giant is like, will they even come? Or it feels like, this is taking so long. I've known they've been spiritually curious for a year and a half. They're still not here. The God who leads us to the land is going to lead us through the land. And the people's problem in the story is they forgot God's rescue. They forgot God's provision. They forgot God led. They forgot God was present. And last year at this time, with coronavirus staring us in the face, and I'm saying, God, how is this supposed to work? This year, I'm reminded the God who leads us to the land is the God who's going to lead us through the land. Last year, we had 8 people who'd said yes to being a part of the front church in April. This Easter, we had 49 humans here on Easter Sunday morning. Yes, kids count as humans. We count them as humans. We actually at the front church think that is our most important thing we're going to do is our kid front ministry. And so we had 49 humans this year. We had 8 in April last year. Last year, we didn't have any big parties. We're not able to have any large gatherings. We're not able to have any backyard barbecues or block parties. But you know what we're able to do this year? Farmers to families. We've given away literally over 100,000 pounds of food. We've impacted literally thousands of families. We've seen literally hundreds of volunteers mobilized. And we didn't have big parties. We didn't have living rooms full of people. We didn't have the God who leads us to the land is going to lead us through the land. Last year, nobody knew who we were, unless it was like my neighbors. And there's still like some suspicion, like, you're starting a church? Like, heard this story before. This year, we did a community Easter egg hunt, not on Easter weekend, but the weekend after, just in a park here in our community. 4,200 households knew about it. And the Front Church helped sponsor it because we want to be a church not just in the community, but for the community. And so we're sponsoring it. I got a little tent. And at the Easter egg hunt, I'm wearing my The Front Church shirt. People are coming up to me and they're saying, thank you for the food drives. Thank you for the food drives. Thank you, this is so good. People know who we are. We've been on every major news outlet except the Salt Lake Tribune. And we haven't even had our grand opening yet. KSL, NBC, CBS, ABC, all those affiliates have covered the Front Church for at least some small news story for nightly news. It's been crazy. Our city council knows who we are. Our fire department brings us energy drinks and bottles of water to help our Farmers and Families event. Last year, no one knew. This year, the God who led us to the land is going to lead us through the land. Last year, we didn't have a place to meet. So then we started meeting in my garage. Ran out of space. Ran out of space if you try and social distance in a garage. You don't have much space to do that. God and God's ways opened our ability to use this building during a pandemic and opened the way so that we have a plan to use it post-pandemic. It's amazing. And the money, our rent money, it might be a little bit, but you know the best part about paying rent to Summit Academy High School? It all goes back into our community. It all stays here. It all gets to bless the very community we want to be a blessing to. Last year, I said, bye-bye, Caleb and Maddie. It was a nice dream to have you guys here as worship leaders. This year, we have worship leaders. We had a band on Easter. When I think about my prayer last year, God, how's this going to work? The God who leads us to the land is going to lead us to the land. Last year, bye-bye, family, who we thought you'd work this all out, God, and crossed our paths perfectly so that you would be here. This year, I just look around the room. I'm like, the God who leads us to the land is going to lead us to the land. I could keep going, but I felt this morning was an appropriate time to remember God's vision is bigger than any interruption we face. And God's vision is to see as many people as possible come into life-giving relationship with his son, Jesus. We say at the Front Church, we're inviting as many people as possible to experience Jesus' story. You know the best part about that? Not our dream, that's God's dream. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only son, that whoever believes in him will not perish but have eternal life. God so loved the world. He wants as many people as possible to come into relationship with his son, Jesus. And the God who leads us to the land is going to lead us through the land. You know what? I hope that 100 years from now, people don't even remember the Front Church. I don't care about the Front Church. I love you guys. Hear me out, though. I don't want people to remember us. I want people to remember Jesus. I don't care if they remember the Front Church. I want them to remember my grandparents' lives were changed. My kids' lives were changed. My family was going this way and felt spiritually homeless, and then we found a home. We felt lost. Our relationship was crumbling, and then Jesus saved our relationship. Jesus saves our family. Jesus saves our marriage. Jesus. The community looked way different, but then Jesus. I don't care if people remember the Front Church. I want them to remember Jesus. The Jesus who rescues us, the Jesus who nourishes us, who leads us, this is the best part about that 15%, 85% statistic about 85% of church plants dying. You know what? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Because what matters most is that people meet Jesus and Jesus turns their lives upside down, because kingdoms and churches and institutions and all that will fade, but Jesus' kingdom doesn't fade. God has led us to the land. He, in his way, is going to lead us through the land, and no interruption and no giant gets to stand in his way. Let's pray.